How's it going, fellas?
Thanks, guys, for welcoming me into your classroom. Subject matter for today is winning and being a competitor. If you guys are like me, when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, I stood out from a lot of my peers in that I loved winning and I hated losing more than almost everybody that I played sports with. Whether it was football, whether it was baseball, winning meant more to me than my peers, and losing really, really dug at me more than it did with my peers. And what that meant was, starting from the age of 7, 8, 9 years old, I started to surround myself with ultra competitive people, because those were the only people who I really saw eye to eye with. If you're playing on a little league team, you're playing on a youth football team, most of the kids are kind of average, but there's always 1, 2 kids on each team who you can tell want to win more than everybody else. And I think that the first step for being a winner, for being a competitor, is identifying as a winner and identifying as a competitor. And that's something that certainly stuck with me through elementary school, through middle school, through high school. When I got to high school, I was undersized. I'm still, not tall. I never was. I was 5'9", 5'10", 150, 160 pounds, struggling to get the attention of local coaches. But I never stopped grinding, and I never stopped pushing myself to compete, to be the best player that I could possibly be. And I kept surrounding myself with ultra competitive people. Looking back on my best friends in high school, they're all ultra successful. My best friend went to the top medical school in the country, got a MCAT score off the charts, and is an orthopedic specialist now after doing his residency at Harvard and playing football in college. And so you guys might not realize this right now, but the fact that you're hanging around people who are extremely competitive and want to win will separate you from, frankly, most of the other people that you guys are going to school with, the other guys that you're living in homes with. Because you guys will learn to see the world in ways that very few people see. You'll start to see opportunities that other people don't see because of how dedicated you are to winning. So the journey of a competitor often starts with identifying as a competitor and then eventually biting off more than you can chew. And so I'll bring this back to my recruiting visit, September 2003. I come here, to me it's between Stanford and Vanderbilt. Stanford was coming off of 3 or 4 consecutive appearances in Omaha at the time. Top academic school right in my backyard. The coach at the time had visited my house. And I had been very, very interested in Stanford for many years because of how local it was. But when I came here on campus, I remember my flight was September 11, 2003. And when I arrived, when I saw the guys practicing, I'll never forget the vibe that I felt here. This was only 3 months after Worth Scott hit his walk-off home run against Tennessee to really catapult the program. And when I saw everybody working hard and supporting each other, that struck me like nothing else in my life had struck me at that time. Separated Vanderbilt from every other program that I was considering. And I thought that, hey, Alex, you want to be a competitor? You want to be a winner? Why don't you compete in the best conference in the country? Why don't you go play in the SEC? And so I ultimately committed here, set foot on campus fall of 2004. I overloaded my plate, right? I bit off more than I could chew. I remember the academic counselors were telling me fall of my freshman year, hey, you should probably only take 13 hours. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a transition for you. And I remember thinking before classes started, yeah, but you don't know me. You don't know that I can push myself. You don't know that I can do this. But I listened to them, and looking back, I'm fortunate that I listened to them, because my first month, 2 months, 3 months, just like you guys on campus, everything was too fast. Practice was way faster than anything I'd ever experienced. Looking at stats for practice never happened for me in high school. Having someone chirping at me for every missed play, every bad throw, every missed fielding ball during practice was something I'd never experienced. And the speed of the game was something that I'd never experienced. That's just on the field. In the classroom, I failed my first test I ever failed. preparing the same way that I prepared in high school that got me basically straight A's. And so my first 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks on campus, it was really an identity check. It was a gut check, just like a lot of you guys are probably going through. And at the time, the only thing I'm thinking is, how do I survive this? How do I get through this? Because the one thing as a competitor that you have to do is you have to figure out how to stay in the game. One thing that all winners have in common is they don't quit. Because if you quit, you can't win. And a lot of times in life, winning doesn't necessarily happen the way you think it's going to. But winning happens when you stay in the game long enough for something good to happen. And so I stayed in the game. You know, I continued to show up every day, put the work in that was necessary to just make it through the day. I had no long-term vision, it was just make it through the day. Season rolls around, I find myself in the starting lineup as a freshman. Every game, it was just compete hard, make it through the game. Right? There was no long-term vision. I'm not thinking about anything beyond make it through the game, make it through the second. After a while, and the older guys can attest to this, after a while everything starts to slow down. Right? Your brain catches up to the speed of everything, and no longer does this game seem fast. No longer does the game in the classroom seem fast. And once everything slows down, you're in a position as a competitor to really start to improve your trajectory, because when everything starts slowing down, you start paying attention to how various patterns work, right? You start realizing, especially because of how the coaches have trained you guys to be competitors and always find ways to get better at every small detail, you'll find that there's almost always a better way to do everything that you're doing. And when you live and breathe that, you realize that learning doesn't start and stop on the field. Learning doesn't start and stop in the classroom. For ultra-competitive people, learning starts the minute they wake up and ends the minute they go to sleep. Right? Think of how much smarter it would be if you're learning 16 hours a day versus 4 hours a day, which is basically what most people do. Right? Most of your peers, well, many of your peers, when they get done, when they graduate as seniors, they may think that they're done learning. But the learning journey in life for winners never stops, because you'll find that this world has an abundance of free information. And so just like if you're watching a pitcher trying to get a jump, trying to steal second base, that's how life works. You'll find ways you can cut corners the right way that will save you time and put you in a better position to win. And I'll give you some examples. My freshman year, my sophomore year, you guys probably noticed, Coach Corbin's a good speaker, right? You start to spend more time around successful business people, good speakers, people who are in shape. You start realizing that, wow, there's a couple of universal cheat codes in life. If I can be in shape and speak well, that's going to open door after door after door for me. So if I don't understand what's going to happen to me after my baseball career ends, and I want an insurance plan, I want to hedge my bets, the best thing I can do is be in shape and speak well. As Coach mentioned, I got drafted after my senior year in a round that no longer exists. Played in the Rockies organization for a couple years. And when I got done, you know, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I had an economics degree from Vanderbilt, and I never did a business internship when I was here. I didn't understand how most businesses work. I didn't understand how banks worked. But because I was a competitor, because I competed every game that I was here, doors were open for me. So I ended up working at a hedge fund for a supporter of the baseball team. And the reason why he hired me and ultimately gave me the opportunity to go move to Hong Kong, only time I'd been to Asia at that point in my life, was because he liked the way I competed and he liked the way that I thought, which was downstream from always realizing that there's a better way to do what you're doing. There's always a more efficient way to connect dots to get advantages in everything that you're doing in life. So I worked for him for a year. I learned how the monetary system worked. And that's a big cheat code that most grown-ups don't know. And when I learned how the monetary system worked, it was essentially the same thing as learning how pitchers tip their pitches. right? Or tip that they're going home, right? If you learn that a pitcher's going to go home, you can get a two-step jump, and you're never going to get thrown out of second base. But when I learned how the monetary system worked, I realized that the tech sector was going to take off. And so I moved home. I decided that I wanted to work at Google. Google had no idea who I was. They kept rejecting me with my online applications, but I was determined. I had this vision in my mind that all I need to do is figure out a way to get invited on Google campus. I was going to wear a custom tailored suit that I got in Hong Kong when I was working there. I was going to speak well. I was going to shake the hand of a hiring manager, and I was going to talk them into hiring me. And I remember telling my friends this, and I remember telling my parents this, and they all thought I was crazy. They're like, what are you talking about? This is like the hardest country to get hired by. Why do you think that that's going to happen? I'm like, no, you guys don't know. You don't know. This is how it's going to be. And after trying for several weeks, I noticed a couple things. Number one, it was hard. It was hard for me to persevere through failure after failure, even for just an 8-week period of time. And I realized at that time that I'm mentally tougher than most people, and this process is challenging for me. And so when I realized that, I realized most people will just give up. You know, most people can fail once, they can fail twice, but they can't fail 30 times in a row. But I knew I had the stamina to fail 30 times in a row, and I knew I had the stamina to overcome rejection or them ignoring me day after day, week after week. And I finally connected to a Vanderbilt alum who was working there. After asking him 3 or 4 times to get breakfast on campus because they serve food at the Google campuses, he let me come in. He said, 8 o'clock, Wednesday, get breakfast. Great. That's my golden ticket. I finally got invited on campus. Now I just need to execute on my plan. So we ate breakfast. The hiring managers he wanted to introduce me to weren't there. We got breakfast. We finished up, came back around, and I was under the impression that there was a hiring freeze. The economy wasn't doing great in 2010, and he told me, hey, Alex, meet Dan, meet Suresh. And they asked me, the first thing they asked me is, why do you want to work in sales? And I told them that I'm used to competing in high pressure environments. I'm used to being evaluated on how I do every day. Exactly as what you guys are seeing with Square Drill, right? Most people don't have this experience at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. They don't know what it's like to be scrutinized under a microscope. But I went through that for 4 years, and I thrived through it, and I succeeded through it, and I got better from it. And being able to articulate that to Google hiring managers basically got me a job offer in about 90 seconds, right? I went from 8 weeks of trying and failing. I finally got my opportunity to make my case. I used speaking skills that I learned from Coach, as well as the shortcuts that I learned from just paying attention to how things worked. And for the most part, that they wanted to hire me from there. I had to go through a formal process, but unlike most people who interview at Google, these hiring managers told me during my interview that we want to hire you. So it's a very low stress thing. I basically convinced them in 90 seconds that it was a smart thing to give me a job. So I did that for 2 years. I realized that if I'm the competitor that I really want to be, I can't stay in the sales unit at Google. It's not going to lead to the optimal amount of second or third opportunities down the line that I want. I need to get into a strategy role. And they kept rejecting me from a strategy role because I didn't have the formal experience that they were looking for. Right? They wanted somebody who worked at a management consulting firm, Bain, Boston Consulting Group, McKinsey. I didn't have that. But I kept trying. I kept scrapping. I was like, well, I don't have this, but I have that. I took a GMAT. I did well in my GMAT. And so I remember telling a strategy director, hey, I'm Alex. I'm just interested in meeting with you. This is after the HR person told me, hey, you don't have the background for this. You know, sorry, you're not the right level. You don't have the right experience. It's not going to happen. Well, I didn't listen to her. And I went around her, and I went directly to the director of the strategy group, and I just said, hey, would love to meet you for coffee. Really interested in what you guys are doing. I was very forthright. Hey, your HR person said I didn't have the right skills for the role, but I am interested in what you guys are doing. Lo and behold, I stayed in the game long enough that 5 months later, get an email from the guy, hey, are you still interested in joining the group? I was. So I did that for 2 years, realized after doing that for 2 years, number one, I worked with people who were in as good shape as I was. And so this was really how what I'm doing right now came to fruition, where I was used to training before work every day because I wanted the advantage of being in shape to stay with me through my entire career. But I started working with this guy named Woods who run multiple miles at a low 6-minute pace on repeat, and he could also, rep 225 6 times at bench. And we had a bro bench competition in that group, and I won it, obviously. 15 reps back when I had a functional shoulder. And but I wanted to be fast like Woods. And I knew that this wasn't supposed to work for fat loss, but I just wanted to compete. I just didn't like the fact that Woods was better than me at running. I wanted to be better than him at running and better than him at lifting. And so, Woods is just my colleague, But I just wanted to be better than him, and I just approached it like a game. I wasn't trying to get super shredded and running fast. I just wanted to get fast at running. And the crazy thing happened back in 2014 is fat started melting off my body in ways that I had never expected. I never thought that this would happen. And rather than think, oh, this is a fluke, as a competitor, I'm like, oh, there's a there. I want to look into this. I want to explore this. If this thing that isn't working, isn't supposed to work, is working, what if I keep doing it? What if I apply it to other areas? Because that's what competitive people do. Well, it did work, and I found myself in a position after 6 years at Google thinking, if I really want to make an impact on the world, it's not going to be through selling ads or doing partnerships in tech. It's going to be sharing with other people how easy fitness can be. And so, I don't know if any of you guys have seen what I'm doing on Instagram or Twitter, but I eat delicious food every meal of every day. I eat a ton of pizza, a ton of tacos, a ton of fried chicken, a ton of burgers. All these foods that you're told you can't have, I figured out a way to make it work because I just wasn't willing to eat salads all day to be lean. And ultimately, when I ended up leaving Google to take a job in the cryptocurrency space, I realized as a competitor that they're paying me a decent amount of money in 2018. But I'm looking to my left, I'm looking to my right, like you guys who may be competing for a starting spot or a spot on the travel roster, and I'm thinking, I don't have what my competition has 3-4 years from now. By that I mean, I'm not using social media as a tool the way they are. I'm not being used by social media, but I'm not using it as a megaphone to expand the message that I have. I'm not going to be employable in my industry 2, 3, 4 years down the line if I don't level up, right? Because as a competitor, you're very aware of what your competition does and can't do, especially if you can't do it. So I committed to creating content daily and sharing how I approach eating, how I approach training. And I stood out because everybody was saying, you gotta do this, you gotta do that to get in shape. Fasting, if it fits your macros, all these things that I wasn't doing. I was just posting pictures of pizza, steak, all this delicious food with like 4% body fat. And people are wondering, how are you doing this? Well, COVID comes around, right? And I'm creating content and releasing products on the fitness side while I'm working my job, which is kind of, if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur after you get done playing, it's not easy because you have to work 2 jobs at the same time. And only ultra-competitive people have the stamina to do that. But I did it because it was something that meant something to me. I wanted to get my message out. I thought it was a good message. And when COVID rolled around, I had a choice. I could stay home. I could be scared. I could try to be extra precautious, or I could take the aggressive approach, the same approach that I took as a player, which was, let me just not do stupid things, and I'm going to live my life normally. And so I kept traveling, kept creating content, and a crazy thing happened in the summer of 2020 is a lot of the interest in the products and the messaging that I was creating really started to spike. And so I remember sending Coach a message in, I think, March of 2020 saying, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you taught me about navigating social structures, navigating corporations, even though Coach isn't talking about navigating corporations. If you pay attention to what he says, you'll learn how to navigate corporations. I can't thank you enough for this. I wouldn't be where I am today without it. And this was before I was doing really anything meaningful on the fitness side. I released a couple products that did pretty well, but I wasn't making meaningful money on it. But I just kept pushing day after day after day to where 18 months later, I was able to replace the income that I was making at the cryptocurrency exchange. Now I can do this full time. And that's the cool part about winning, is every win you have opens a door that wouldn't be open for you if you didn't win the previous battle, right? So looking back, people who don't know me might say, oh, that's crazy. You were a professional baseball player, you played at Vanderbilt, you worked at a hedge fund, you worked at Google, you worked in crypto, you're a health entrepreneur. How do you do all that? You won seven battles, like in very, very different fields. And what they don't understand is every time you win once, it makes winning a second time easier. And every time you win a second time, it makes winning a third time easier. And the same thing's true with losing. Every time you lose, it makes losing a second time easier. And the second time you lose, it makes losing a third time easier. And that's why when I go about my business, I'm very militant about not letting losses compound. Because that's how most people get taken out of the game. Right? They have one bad day followed by a second bad day, and all of a sudden they're in a bad mood, and they stop putting the work in that's necessary to succeed. And I realized from the 4 years that I spent here that the most important thing I can do is keep my mind in the game, and no matter what happens, all I can do is focus on my next at bat. And so with the way I run my business right now, I have great days, I have bad days. And every month I'm going to have 2 to 9 bad days. That's just the nature of the business. There's a lot of volatility in how the revenue goes. And I realized from looking at my peers who didn't have backgrounds as Vanderbilt baseball players that they can't handle the volatility of it. Sure, they can handle it when things are going well, but things are going to go poorly 2 to 9 days out of the month. And you got to ask yourself, is that going to take you out of the game? Because it does for most people, and that's why they're not successful, because they can't string positive effort after positive effort after positive effort, because they don't realize that in life, if you want an easy life, learn to be a winner. Because the more you win, the easier it is to continue winning. The more you lose, the easier it is to continue losing. And the punishment for losing, when you get to be my age or older, is you have to do something that you don't want to do with your time for somebody who you don't like, right? And I remember thinking 5-10 years ago how grateful I am as an adult to be able to compete, right? Because as men, we need to compete. It may be stressful at times, but you put yourself in an environment that lacks the ability to compete, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months in, you're going to be depressed. And the modern environment will deprive you of a lot of opportunities to be competitive. So every opportunity you have to compete, cherish it, and the better you do, the more opportunities you're going to continue to have, whether it's in the game of baseball or not. If there's one thing you can take from the experience that you guys have, it's learning how to be a competitor and learning how to compete like it's breathing. Every minute of every day, you always have an opportunity to see something that other people don't see and act on it. Let's take advantage of it, boys.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate you spending time and sharing your experiences with these kids because it's very meaningful. For them to understand that you were sitting in that chair years ago and where you are right now, they're all going to have these opportunities, but it's such good information, and I know you could be a resource to them too. So if you want to, and I'll do it with your permission, you can always share your number.
Yeah, 100%. You guys reach out anytime you want.
Yeah, but he's around. He watches you guys play a bunch, and in person too. First time we went to Omaha, he's there. Second time we went to Omaha, he's there. I mean, just a real guy, and appreciate him every day. So get to the field and